The crystal champagne flute felt like a shard of ice in my hand, its stem so delicate I feared it might snap under the pressure of my grip. Around my parents' sprawling, perfectly decorated dining table, my extended family smiled, their faces glowing in the warm, flattering light of the chandelier. It was a scene from a magazine, a picture of perfect family unity that I knew was as fragile as the glass I held. "A toast," my mother, Diane, announced, her voice dripping with honeyed pride that filled the entire room. She raised her own glass high, the liquid catching the light. "To my Jessica, my perfect daughter, finally getting her perfect, storybook wedding." A wave of happy murmurs and the gentle clinking of glasses swept through our gathered relatives. Then, as if on a dreaded cue, her gaze slid from my beaming sister and landed squarely on me. It was like a switch had flipped behind her eyes, the warmth vanishing to be replaced by a cool, assessing look. "And Kate, dear," she sighed, a masterful performance of weary maternal concern. She offered a small, pitying smile to the table. "Maybe all this wedding excitement will finally inspire you to stop being so picky. It's time to find a good man. A simple, solid man who can learn to overlook your ambition." The room fell into a thick, awkward silence. My own smile felt frozen and brittle on my face, a mask I was terrified would crack. "Overlook it," I screamed inside my head, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "It's the part of me I'm most proud of." I could feel my knuckles turning white as I gripped the cold glass. This wasn't a family celebration. It felt like a public execution, and I was the one being put on display for my supposed crimes, my ambition treated as a shameful secret. My name is Kate, and that moment at my sister's engagement dinner was the final, shattering straw that broke a lifetime of patience. It was the moment a crystal-clear decision settled deep in my heart, cold and hard as a diamond, a resolve that would shape my future. I decided right then, surrounded by the people who were supposed to love me most, that my mother would never ever get to plan my wedding. The thought was both terrifying and utterly freeing, a secret rebellion that warmed me from the inside out, a tiny flame I vowed to protect. If I ever got married, it would be my day, not another stage for her to perform on, not another opportunity for her to compare me to Jessica and find me lacking. She had spent my entire life drawing a very specific circle, and telling me I didn't belong inside it. I was done trying to squeeze myself into a shape that wasn't me, contorting my personality and ambitions to fit her narrow ideal. That night, I drove home to my quiet apartment alone, the hum of the car engine a soothing sound, the city lights blurring past the windows. I walked through my own door, a space I paid for with the career she scoffed at, and I let the beautiful silence heal me. It was the first night of the rest of my life, a life I was going to build for myself by my own rules, for my own happiness, and I felt a profound sense of calm settle over me for the first time in years. The favoritism in our house wasn't a subtle undercurrent. It was the very foundation everything was built on, as obvious and unchangeable as the color of the walls, a truth we all lived with but never acknowledged out loud. Jessica was the golden child, the sun around which our family planet orbited, and I was the shadow she cast, always a step behind, always in the dimmer light, my achievements seeming to pale in comparison to her mere existence. When Jessica got engaged to Mark, my parents immediately set up a lavish, no expenses spared wedding fund, talking about it with giddy excitement as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When I graduated at the top of my class and earned a promotion to vice president at my tech firm, I received a dry, emailed article about the importance of maxing out my 401k and a lecture on financial responsibility, as if my success was merely a financial planning opportunity. Jessica's fiancé, Mark, a kind and quiet teacher, was endlessly praised for being stable and reliable. My last boyfriend, a brilliant and kind software architect, was dismissed over dinner as being too intimidated by my career and personality, as if my intelligence was a burden. I was always the difficult one, the one with too many opinions, too much drive, too much everything. I didn't fit the mold of the sweet, accommodating daughter she could show off to her friends, and I certainly didn't fit the image she had of a blushing, passive bride. My ambition, the very thing that fueled me and gave me purpose, was treated like a flaw, a problem she felt needed to be fixed before I could be deemed worthy of love, a project she was constantly, silently working on. About a week after the painfully awkward engagement dinner, I went to my parents' house to pick up some old childhood photos I needed for a work project. The house was quiet, filled with the ticking of an antique clock and the faint smell of lemon polish, and I found my mother in the backyard, meticulously tending to her prized rose bushes. She wore her wide-brimmed gardening hat and gloves, snipping away with focused precision, completely absorbed in her task. "It's just a fact of life, Kate," she said, not even bothering to look up from a perfect blood-red bloom she was inspecting. Her voice was calm, conversational, as if we were discussing the flowers themselves. "You've built a life that inevitably scares good men away. You're too focused, too independent. You have this intensity that can be off-putting." She finally glanced at me, her expression not unkind, just matter-of-fact, as if she were a doctor delivering a difficult but necessary diagnosis. "You'll never be a bride. You're just not the type." She said it so calmly, so finally, as if she were commenting on the chance of rain. There was no heated malice in her tone, no anger. That was what hurt the most, the cold, absolute certainty. She wasn't trying to be cruel. She genuinely believed it. She had diagnosed my life and delivered the prognosis without a second thought. And in her mind, she was simply helping me face reality. The finality of her words stole the air from my lungs, leaving me standing there breathless and hollow, the sunny garden suddenly feeling like a cold, sterile room. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't try to list my qualities or defend my life choices. I just went completely, utterly quiet both inside and out, all the noise in my head suddenly ceasing. A strange, cold clarity washed over me, numbing the sharp, familiar sting of her words, replacing the hurt with a solid, unmovable resolve. It was as if a fog had lifted, and for the first time, I could see the landscape of our relationship with perfect, painful clarity, seeing the patterns that had been there since childhood. She had drawn a deep, uncrossable line in the sand between us, a line that separated the kind of woman who deserved a happy ending from the kind who didn't, and she had placed me firmly on the wrong side. I realized then, standing in her perfect garden, that I would never win by trying to cross that line. I would only ever be begging for scraps of approval from the other side, diminishing myself piece by piece until there was nothing left of the person I wanted to be. So, I made a choice that would change everything. I wouldn't cross her line. I would turn my back on it and build my own world, a beautiful, whole and complete world entirely on my side of that divide, a world where I made the rules. I left her garden without another word, the definitive click of the gate behind me sounding like a lock turning shut, sealing my decision and my future. I met Tom 3 months later, at a charity 5K run for a local animal shelter. It was a crisp Saturday morning, and I was there with a few colleagues, the air fresh and the atmosphere lively. He was there with his dog, a goofy, wiggling golden retriever named Gus, whose leash was constantly getting tangled around Tom's legs, creating a scene of cheerful chaos. Tom was an architect, and he had this calm, steady confidence about him that was immediately appealing, a sense that he was completely comfortable in his own skin. His eyes were a warm shade of brown, and I noticed he really listened when people spoke, his full attention on them, making them feel heard. On our third date, over shared pizza at a cozy, dimly lit place with red checkered tablecloths, I found myself telling him about my mother's "you'll never be a bride" comment, the words feeling heavy as I spoke them aloud. I braced myself for the usual reactions, pity, awkwardness, or worse, agreement that I was perhaps a bit too much. But Tom just looked at me, his head tilted slightly as he processed my words, his gaze thoughtful. Then he reached across the table, his hand covering mine, his touch warm and solid, a grounding presence. "Well," he said, his voice firm and sure, leaving no room for argument, "she's wrong. And frankly, she sounds like an idiot for not seeing how amazing you are. Any man would be lucky to have you." I think my heart did a complete somersault in my chest. I think I fell in love with him right in that moment, over a half-eaten pepperoni pizza, in a noisy little restaurant that suddenly felt like the center of the universe. Our relationship quickly became my secret sanctuary, a peaceful haven I had never known was possible, a place where I could finally let my guard down completely. With Tom I was just Kate. I wasn't the difficult daughter or the intimidating executive. I was just me with all my quirks and passions and flaws, and that was more than enough for him. He loved my ambition. He called it my fire, and he always stoked it, never tried to put it out, celebrating my drive as one of his favorite things about me. He celebrated my promotions with more enthusiasm than I did, and he listened to my complicated work stories with genuine interest, often offering surprisingly insightful perspectives that helped me see solutions I had missed. For the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly chosen for exactly who I was, with no disclaimers or conditions, no sense that I needed to be quieter or smaller. We built a life together in his sunny, slightly messy apartment, filled with books, rolled-up blueprints, and the happy pitter-patter of Gus's paws on the hardwood floors, a home that was alive with love and laughter. It was a world away from the cold, judgmental atmosphere of my mother's perfectly curated world. It was a home, built on laughter and mutual respect, and every day I spent there felt like a gift. He proposed on a crisp, breathtaking autumn morning, high on a hiking trail as the sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink that reflected in the quiet lakes below. It was just us, the sleeping mountains, and the quiet chirping of waking birds, a perfect private moment suspended in time. There was no grand, orchestrated gesture, no audience. It was just Tom, down on one knee on the dusty path, holding a simple, beautiful platinum ring that gleamed in the early light. His hands were slightly trembling, and his eyes were wide with a vulnerable hope that made my breath catch. "You are the most incredible person I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion, the words simple and true. "Will you build a life with me?" I said yes before he even finished the question, pulling him up and into a hug, my own tears of joy mixing with the chilly morning air, our laughter echoing softly in the vast quiet. As we stood there wrapped in each other, watching the sun crest the peaks and bathe the world in a soft gold, I knew exactly what I had to do, the reality of our situation settling over me. I turned to him, my face serious, my heart still racing from the joy of the proposal. "We can't tell my family," I whispered, the words feeling both treacherous and necessary, a protection for the beautiful thing we had just created. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for an explanation. He just squeezed my hand, his ring-safe hand in mine, and said, "Whatever you need, Kate. I'm with you. Always." In that moment I felt a love so strong and supportive I knew I could face anything, even my own family. The wedding planning began in absolute, joyful secrecy, a delicious conspiracy of love that bonded Tom and me even closer together. It felt like our own private project, a shared dream we were building brick by brick, away from prying eyes and critical voices. We spent weekends driving to look at venues, finally settling on a stunning vineyard 2 hours away, nestled in rolling hills that promised privacy and natural beauty, a place that felt like it was ours alone. I found my dress with only my best friend Chloe by my side, in a small sunlit boutique where I felt no pressure, only excitement and the comforting presence of my truest friend. There were no opinions from my mother or sister to cloud my judgment, only Chloe's honest tears and my own feeling of rightness when I looked in the mirror and saw the woman I was becoming. Tom and I created a private, dedicated email address that we used for all our vendor correspondence, the florist, the baker, the band. Every decision, from the deep burgundy of the napkins to the flavor of the cake, was ours alone, made over takeout and laughter in our pajamas, in the comfort of our own home. It was our project, our shared joy, completely untarnished by outside opinions or drama. It was, ironically, the most fun and stress-free I'd ever had planning anything, a secret that bonded Tom and me even closer together, a testament to what we could build as a team. A whole year flew by in a blissful, secretive blur, the seasons changing outside our window as we planned our future behind the scenes. Our wedding date was set, the vendors were booked, and our life together was falling into a happy, comfortable rhythm that felt more like home with every passing day. During that time, my mother would occasionally ask about Tom, her questions like subtle traps designed to uncover some flaw or instability in our relationship. "Is he getting serious yet?" she'd probe during our monthly phone calls, her voice laced with a false, breezy casualness that didn't quite hide her agenda. "Or is he getting cold feet? Men like him, so focused on their careers, can be fickle, you know. They often have trouble with commitment." I had perfected my response, a calm and neutral shield against her probing. I just shrugged, even though she couldn't see it, and let a small, genuine smile creep into my voice, a smile that was completely real. "We're really happy, Mom. That's what matters." It was the complete and utter truth. The secret wedding we were building, the future we were crafting piece by piece behind the scenes, was making us happier and more connected than I could have ever imagined. Every time I looked at the hidden folder on my computer, filled with photos of the venue and sketches of floral arrangements, I felt a thrill of excitement and profound peace. We were getting away with the perfect crime of happiness, and the secret made our joy even sweeter. The wedding invitations were a work of art, a physical representation of the day we had dreamed up, a taste of the elegance and love that would define our celebration. We had chosen a heavy cream-colored paper with elegant, deep green embossed script, the feel of it substantial and important in your hands. On a sunny Tuesday afternoon, Tom and I played hooky from work and went to the main post office together. A box of sealed promises between us, the weight of it feeling significant. We laughed and kissed as we dropped them into the big blue mailbox, one by one, each envelope a tiny vessel carrying our joy out into the world. My mother's invitation was physically identical to everyone else's, a deliberate choice that spoke volumes without saying a word. It was addressed in that same beautiful script, but to Diane and guest. A simple, stark designation that erased her special status. There was no mother of the bride designation. No special, thicker, more important envelope. No phone call beforehand to give her a heads up or a chance to insert herself into the process. She was being treated exactly like Tom's great-aunt Mildred or my college roommate. A guest on our list, nothing more, nothing less, her role in our day clearly and calmly defined by us. As I slid her envelope through the slot, hearing it fall into the dark interior with a soft rustle, I felt a monumental weight lift from my shoulders. There was no going back now, and for the first time that thought brought only relief and a soaring sense of freedom. The phone call came exactly 48 hours later, almost to the minute, as if she had been calculating the mail delivery times, her patience worn thin by the wait. I was in the middle of a budget meeting when my personal phone lit up on the conference table, showing Mom, the name flashing like a warning beacon. I let it go to voicemail, my heart giving a nervous jump, the numbers on the spreadsheet in front of me suddenly blurring together. She called 3 more times in rapid succession, a persistent, buzzing intrusion, before I finally worked up the nerve to answer that evening, sitting on my couch with Tom holding my hand, his presence a steady anchor. Catherine Elizabeth. Her voice was tight, controlled like a coiled spring about to snap, each syllable clipped and precise. I could picture her perfectly, her lips pressed into a thin line, her posture rigid. I just received an invitation in the mail. I leaned back against the cushions, taking a slow, steadying breath, focusing on the feeling of the soft fabric beneath me. Tom gave my hand an encouraging squeeze, his eyes telling me I could do this. Great, I said, my voice purposefully light and breezy, as if she just told me she'd received a coupon flyer, a piece of mundane mail. Hope you and your guests can make it. The silence on the other end of the line was a physical, heavy force, thick with disbelief and simmering anger, a void that seemed to suck all the sound from the room. I could almost feel her shock radiating through the phone, a wave of cold fury that was almost palpable. You're getting married, she finally sputtered, her control cracking, her voice rising an octave into a register of pure, unadulterated shock. To Tom? In 3 weeks. And you're telling me like this? Like I'm some distant cousin you barely know. The questions tumbled out, laced with indignation and a sense of profound betrayal that she felt was entirely justified. I kept my voice calm and level, though my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of anxiety. I focused on the feeling of Tom's hand in mine, the solid, warm reality of his support, using it as a tether to my own calm. You told me I'd never be a bride, I reminded her gently, the words clear and precise, each one chosen carefully. You looked me in the eye in your garden and said I wasn't the type. You stated it as a fact. I paused, letting the memory hang between us on the phone line. So, I didn't think you'd need or want to be involved in planning a wedding you never believed would happen. It seemed simpler this way. There was a sharp, audible intake of breath on her end, a hiss of pure outrage, as if I had physically slapped her. I had never spoken to her so directly before, had never held up a mirror to her behavior and made her look at the reflection. I had always absorbed her comments in silence, letting them chip away at me. This defiance, this calm statement of fact, was new and dangerous territory for both of us, and the air crackled with the shift in power. The fallout was immediate and unfolded exactly as I had predicted. A play where I already knew every line, every gesture, every note of fake concern and real anger. My father called me the very next morning, his voice tired and pleading, The sound of a man caught in the crossfire of a war he didn't understand. "Kate, honey, your mother is devastated. She's been crying all night. She feels so excluded, so hurt. What is this all about? Why would you do this to her?" His words were heavy with a confusion that made my heart ache for him, but not enough to change my mind. Then came the relentless barrage of texts from my sister, Jessica, a rapid-fire assault on my character. "How could you be so cruel to Mom?" one read. "She's your mother. You're deliberately humiliating her," another said. "You've always been so selfish," a third message accused. Each word a tiny dagger confirming the family narrative. According to the well-established family dynamic, I was now the villain, the cold, ungrateful daughter. I was the problem for having the audacity to set a boundary, for wanting one single, sacred day to be entirely about Tom and me and our love, without her drama and her insatiable need to be the center of attention. Their reactions, while painful, only solidified my resolve, proving with every text and call that my decision had been not just right, but necessary for my own sanity and the integrity of our wedding day. The week of the wedding, the tension reached its peak, the air so thick with unspoken anger you could almost taste it. My mother showed up unannounced at my apartment building on a Wednesday evening, a last-ditch effort to regain control. I saw her through the peephole, standing stiffly in the hallway, her face a perfect mask of strained martyrdom, her jaw set. She had clearly come straight from some event, dressed in her best, as if to remind me of the world of appearances she valued so much. She rang the bell 3 times, each ring more insistent and prolonged than the last, a demanding chime that echoed in the quiet hallway. I held my breath, my back pressed firmly against the cool wood of the door, and didn't make a sound, my entire body tense. I watched her shadow under the door, a dark, unmoving shape, for 5 long minutes that felt like an eternity. I could almost feel her anger and frustration radiating through the barrier, a heat I could sense even from my side. Finally, with a sound of disgust, a sharp, frustrated sigh, I heard her sharp heels click-clack away down the tiled hall, the sound fading slowly. My heart was pounding like a wild thing, and my hands were trembling, but I didn't move. I had protected my peace. I had protected our secret, our joy. I had won a small, silent battle by simply refusing to open the door. The morning of my wedding, I woke up feeling completely and utterly serene, as if all the anxiety of the past few weeks had simply melted away in the night. There was no anxiety, no dread, no last-minute panic about details or family drama. Sunlight streamed in soft beams through the large windows of the beautiful suite at the vineyard, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The air was fresh and smelled of blooming jasmine from the gardens below, a sweet, promising scent. Chloe was there, her hands gently working through my hair, carefully applying my makeup, her touch soothing and familiar. Tom's sisters, who had over the past year become my dear friends and fierce allies, were there too, laughing and helping me step into my dress, their excitement contagious and genuine. It was a simple, elegant gown that made me feel like the most authentic and beautiful version of myself, the woman Tom was going to marry. There was no drama, no stressful demands or criticisms, just pure bubbling anticipation and the sound of our favorite acoustic playlist filling the room, creating a bubble of happiness around us. I was about to marry my best friend, on our own terms, surrounded only by people who truly loved and supported us, who cheered for our happiness without reservation. It was perfect, and I felt a deep, unshakable calm settle in my soul. The ceremony was set in the vineyard's most beautiful garden, under a rustic wooden arch woven with lush white flowers and trailing green ivy, a natural cathedral under the open sky. As the music began, a gentle instrumental version of our favorite song, I took a deep, calming breath, the scent of roses and earth filling my lungs, and started walking down the aisle. By myself. It was a deliberate, powerful choice I had made, a statement of my independence and my conscious choice to walk towards this man and this future. I was giving myself away, choosing my own path, just as I had chosen this man and this day. I was a strong, independent woman walking confidently into my future, not being given away like property from one man to another. As I walked, my gaze swept over the smiling, tearful faces of our friends, seeing their joy reflected back at me. Then I saw them. My mother was seated in the 3rd row, not the front, a deliberate placement that spoke volumes. Her face was a dark thundercloud of displeasure, her lips pressed into a thin, angry crimson line. My father sat beside her, looking deeply uncomfortable, his eyes darting around nervously, unable to meet my gaze for long. I didn't look at them for long. My eyes found Tom, waiting for me at the end of the petal-strewn path. He was beaming, his own eyes shining with unshed tears of pure joy, and in that singular moment, nothing else in the world mattered, not the past, not the tension, only our future. At the reception during the lively cocktail hour, she made her move, emerging from the crowd like a shark cutting through calm water. I was admiring the stunning dessert table, a masterpiece of confectionery art, when she materialized at my side, her presence immediately casting a chill. She was smiling for the benefit of anyone who might be watching, a tight, practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes, but her words, whispered close to my ear, were pure venom meant to wound. "You have humiliated me beyond belief," she hissed, her voice low and sharp as a razor blade, each word precise and cold. "You have completely and deliberately ruined my only daughter's wedding day. This should have been my moment too." I took a small, deliberate sip of my champagne, my hand remarkably steady, the bubbles tart on my tongue. I met her gaze, my own calm and unwavering, refusing to be pulled into her storm. "No, Mom," I replied, my voice quiet but firm enough for her, and only her to hear, a private truth spoken in a public space. "You did that the day you told me I'd never have one. You planted that seed. This is my day, the one you said would never come. You are a guest here. Please act like one." Her smile faltered for a split second, a flash of genuine shock in her eyes before they hardened again into chips of ice. She turned on her heel and walked away, her spine rigid with barely contained fury, her retreat a silent promise that this wasn't over. I knew with a cold certainty that settled in my bones, that it wasn't over. The confrontation at the dessert table was just a skirmish, a preliminary volley in a war she was determined to win. I could feel the tense, angry energy radiating from her across the room as she spoke in a heated whisper to my aunt, her gestures sharp and agitated. She was a gathering storm, and I knew she would break before the night was over, unable to resist the spotlight, even a negative one. I had prepared for this, having learned long ago that hope was not a strategy. I caught the eye of Maria, the incredibly capable and unflappable venue coordinator I had hired, a woman whose efficiency I deeply admired. Weeks ago, I had taken her aside for a long, honest conversation, warning her about my mother's potential for creating drama and her tendency toward public scenes. I gave Maria a small, subtle nod from across the room, a signal we had prearranged. Her almost imperceptible nod back was all the confirmation I needed. The plan was in motion. She had discreetly briefed a member of the security team, a large, calm man in a dark suit who was now positioned near the entrance, watching the room with a professional eye. A profound sense of calm settled over me. We were prepared. I was not going to let her steal my joy. I was the captain of this ship, and I would not let it sink, not after we had come so far. I shared a quiet, slow father-daughter dance with my dad, a moment I had insisted on because despite everything, I loved him and knew he was just trying to keep the peace in a house that was often at war. It was a moment I had insisted on, and I had flown him in a day early so we could have a private dinner, just the two of us, a chance to connect without my mother's dominating presence. Over steak I had told him everything, the years of comments, the never a bride declaration, our secret planning, my reasons for the secrecy. To my surprise and relief he understood. His eyes sad but accepting. "Your mother is a complicated woman," he'd said, holding my hand across the table, his grip warm and familiar. "She sees the world in a very specific way. I'm just happy you're happy, Katie. Tom is a good man." Now as we danced to a soft classic rock ballad, his hand was warm on my back, a comforting weight. I saw my mother out of the corner of my eye. She was not watching us dance, not sharing in this tender moment. She was whispering furiously to a small group of my aunts, gesturing subtly in my direction, her face animated with indignation. I watched as their faces shifted from polite attention to confusion, then to distinct discomfort, their smiles fading as they listened to her version of events. She was poisoning the well, turning them against me with her twisted, victim-centered version of the story, ensuring she had allies in her war on my happiness, recruiting soldiers for a battle only she was fighting. It was during the toast that she finally made her grand, disastrous play, deciding that if she couldn't control the narrative, she would hijack it entirely. The dinner had been served, the plates cleared away, and Tom's best man, his brother Alex, had just finished a funny, heartfelt speech that had the whole room laughing and wiping away tears of joy, the atmosphere warm and celebratory. The applause was warm and thunderous, filling the ballroom with a sound of pure happiness. As it died down, my mother stood up, clutching her half-full wine glass, her posture unnaturally straight. She hadn't been on the list to speak. The band wasn't cued for her. "I'd like to say a few words about my daughter," she announced, her voice trembling with a fake, emotional quiver she had perfected over the years, a sound designed to instantly garner sympathy. The room fell into a stunned, uneasy hush, the cheerful noise cutting off abruptly. All eyes turned to her, a mix of curiosity and confusion on their faces, the mood shifting palpably. My heart sank to the pit of my stomach, a cold dread washing over me, but I kept my face carefully neutral, looking only at Tom, drawing strength from his presence. He squeezed my hand under the table, his jaw tight, his own body tense with anticipation. "I may not have been included in any of the planning," she began, a single perfect tear tracing a path down her expertly made-up cheek, a calculated gesture of grief. It was a masterful performance, designed to elicit maximum sympathy, and put me in the role of the heartless villain. She paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with various guests, drawing them into her drama. But a mother's love, that was as far as she got. Just as she paused for dramatic effect, drawing a shaky breath, Maria and the tall, calm security guard were at her side in an instant, moving with efficient, discreet purpose. They materialized as if from the shadows, a planned intervention. "Ma'am," the guard said, his voice firm but low, meant only for her and those immediately nearby. "You need to come with us, please." The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in someone's glass, the rustle of fabric as people shifted in their seats. My mother's face went from performative sorrow to utter, genuine shock, her mouth dropping open slightly in a perfect O of disbelief, the tear frozen on her cheek. The poetic justice of the moment was so breathtaking it was almost beautiful. A scene of such perfect, deserved consequence it felt scripted by a higher power. Her own insatiable need for a dramatic public scene, her desire to be the center of attention even as the victim, was her ultimate undoing, the very thing that exposed her true nature to everyone. As she was calmly but firmly escorted from the edge of the dance floor toward a side exit, her arm held gently but immovably by the guard, she began to sputter protests, her composure shattering completely. "This is my daughter's wedding. You can't do this. Let go of me," she said, her voice rising in pitch and volume, becoming shrill and panicked, the mask of dignity completely gone. But everyone could see the truth unfold before them, a reality more dramatic than any speech. They saw the mother of the bride being physically removed for causing a disruption, for refusing to respect the boundaries of the event. The mask of the perfect, wounded mother was off, ripped away in the most public way possible, and everyone in the room witnessed what was underneath: the raw, unchecked need for control, the willingness to ruin a wedding for a moment in the spotlight. The silence lasted for a moment longer, heavy and profound, before the band, on a quick signal from Maria, struck up a cheerful, upbeat song, flooding the room with sound and breaking the tense spell, urging everyone to move on from the shocking interlude. The rest of the night was pure, unadulterated magic, a celebration that felt lighter, freer, and more joyful than I could have ever dreamed possible. The air itself felt lighter, cleaner, freed from the oppressive weight of her toxic presence, as if a storm had passed and left clear skies in its wake. The dance floor was instantly packed, as if people were desperate to shake off the weirdness with movement and joy, to reclaim the happiness of the occasion, and soon the ballroom was filled with the sound of laughter and music. We laughed until our sides hurt, we danced with abandon under the twinkling lights, we celebrated with all our friends and the family members who truly loved and supported us, their affection feeling more genuine than ever. The love in the room was so palpable and pure it brought fresh, happy tears to my eyes, tears of relief and overwhelming joy. When Tom and I cut the cake, feeding each other a sweet slice amidst a shower of laughter and camera flashes, surrounded by the cheers of our guests, I knew with every fiber of my being that I had done the right thing. I had my perfect day, the day I had always dreamed of, and I had it specifically because I had been brave enough to protect it from her, to build a fortress of love around it that she could not breach. It was a victory not of malice, but of self-preservation and the fierce protection of our own happiness. That was 6 months ago. A half year that has passed in a blur of newlywed bliss and peaceful, quiet mornings. I never heard from my mother after that night. No angry emails, no tearful, manipulative apology calls. No more guilt-tripping texts disguised as concern. Just silence. And in that profound, unexpected silence, I found the greatest gift she could have ever given me: peace. I learned that the ultimate revenge isn't about getting angry or getting even. It's not about loud confrontations or public shaming. It's about finding your own happiness and holding on to it with both hands, building a life so full of joy that there's no room for the poison of the past. It's about building a beautiful, joyful, and fulfilling life with a person who sees your fire not as something to be feared or overlooked, but as something to cherish and admire, a vital part of the woman he loves. She told me I'd never be a bride, so I made sure she was there to see me become a wife utterly and magnificently without her, standing on my own 2 feet, surrounded by my own chosen family. Tom and I are building our life together, one happy, ordinary, wonderful day at a time, in a home filled with love, blueprints, and the constant happy wagging of a golden retriever's tail. And I've never ever been happier. The silence, once a weapon she used through withdrawal of affection, is now my sanctuary, a peaceful space where I can finally just be me.